Joining us on Wall Street Silver today is Bix Weir. He is a freelance author and analyst dedicated to exposing the long-term manipulation of gold and silver markets. How are you doing today, Bix?
I'm awesome. I'm real excited to be here talking with you guys. You're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Thank you so much. Thank you for even taking your time to talking to the Wall Street Silver community. First question is, you have said the US Mint is in on the market manipulation. Can you explain your thinking behind that?
Sure, they're one of the largest real hedgers in the market, given they've got the most popular silver coin out there, the US Silver Eagle, and they have a huge hedging program. Sometimes it gets out of hand. It was run by HSBC for a while. Not sure who's running it now, but an interesting kind of side fact, just like the Perth Mint, just like the Royal Canadian Mint, when they do have shortages of silver, the banks or the mints don't close out their hedges. So they've basically got naked hedges while they're searching for silver. According to their program, the US Mint says that for every ounce of silver they bring in, they put a hedge on, and every ounce of silver that goes out, they buy the hedge back. Well, the problem is when they're running out of silver, they've got to go in and buy the hedges back, and they don't want to cause an updraft in the market, so they don't buy their hedges back. So they sit there with a naked short until things calm down. So that's one of the ways they help. Obviously, there's the current situation where they're either stop making silver coins or they're on huge allocation. It's completely illegal under US law, which states that they have to create quantities to meet demand. Now, they did change that law after we screamed about it about 7 or 8 years ago, such that the Treasury Secretary could be the one who determines whether or not they're meeting demand. But clearly, I mean, even the US Mint said there's a huge silver shortage, so they're not meeting demand. I don't know where Janet Yellen gets off shutting down the production of certain silver items coming out of the mint.
Well, I think they corrected themselves. There's not a silver shortage. There's a shortage of blanks, remember?
They're required by law to bid whatever wins the silver blanks. They could be bidding $100 an ounce for silver blanks. I'm sure they'll get a whole bunch of them.
Do you know how that works? I mean, I've heard Sunshine Mint is one of the providers. Are there multiple? I would think you'd have multiple providers. Do you know?
There are multiple providers. I heard the Perth Mint provides US mint blanks as well. I heard there's 3 or 4, and conveniently they all stop producing when it doesn't suit their book. Okay. And they're required by law to bid higher if necessary. So my take is they're all in on it. They're all conspiring with each other to spin the story any way they can.
Now, I've also heard, though, that the U.S. Mint has a conflicting regulation where they're not allowed to pay more than the average of the market price, the spot price, to acquire the raw silver.
It's a pass-through. The law says they're supposed to provide the Eagles at basically their cost, including whatever their minting costs are or markups or whatever. So the law is very specific as to, especially the difference between Eagles and silver Eagles and gold Eagles. Gold Eagles, they can only source the gold from the United States of America, and they aren't required to buy at any price. Silver was written in 1987, it was written into law that the silver Eagles, you have to buy them at any price wherever you can get them in the world to meet demand.
So they're just ignoring the law, is what you're saying?
Again, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. JP Morgan, you recently said, controls 63% of all eligible COMEX silver. And our own guy, Ditch the Deep State on Reddit, he's well known for gathering all this data about the COMEX and how silver is moving through there. And he's basically said, that JP Morgan's the only one who could bail out the registered category of silver right now. No one else really has any significant amounts. And even that 63% that you mentioned, a large portion of that JPM doesn't actually own. It's held, they hold it in their name for clients, and it's not like the head guy at the metals desk can just say, "Hey, I'm going to shift 100 million over to." It's like, that belongs to Berkshire Hathaway. You can't shift that right now.
But
Right.
I would say it's not that separated. For example, Bank of America is supposed to be leasing a lot of silver from J.P. Morgan. So I
Mhm.
would assume that in those J.P. Morgan vaults, you have leased silver from B of A who couldn't fulfill their contracts, which is like a double short, if you ask me, because B of A's got short contracts they have to cover. Oh, so they go out and lease it, which they have to pay back at some point anyway. So yes, but definitely JP Morgan, if you look at the JP Morgan deliveries for the last couple months after they signed the, I admit that we rigged the silver market. After they sign that, they're not allowed to do anything as
Mhm.
far as deliveries, and they haven't. It's just their customers, but they control it all. They lease it out. Why JP Morgan, who has supposedly over 1 billion ounces of silver, is allowed to have 1 billion ounces of silver when the Hunt brothers only had 100 million? You got me. I mean, it's another thing where we live in
Mhm.
a criminal world of nothing but market manipulation, and in literally every market, silver just happens to be the worst.
I don't know if you've seen this before, Bix. Tell me yes
I
or
have.
no. This is Rick Rule's favorite chart. Um, this has basically been tracking since the vertical dotted line, the Silversqueeze, right here. And this is PSLV's inventory going through the roof.
PSLV, that's the Sprott SLV type, equivalent. SLV had that big spike in January, February timeframe of 100 million ounces, and then it spiked down 100 million. At the same time, the LBMA was rigging their numbers. Who knows if the COMEX numbers are being rigged as far as what silver is really registered, what silver is really eligible, what silver is being double or triple counted as SLV inventory. I don't think PSLV. I think the PSLV actually does get delivered to Sprott. I don't think he would stand for anything other than that.
No, yeah, we just interviewed Rick Rule. He said they're not allowed to do anything with receipts. They don't pay for it till they have control of it.
Right.
And it's in their grubby, I think he said, what did he say? Dirty little hand, grubby little hands or something like that?
And they are.
Yeah.
But JP Morgan, you just look at JP Morgan, they own the COMEX inventories. They are the trustee of the silver in SLV and most of the silver ETFs other than PSLV and CEF, I think. But it is insane that this, I wouldn't say convicted criminal bank, but when you've paid $35 billion in fines over the past 20 years for crimes that you committed on the COMEX, why would BlackRock, a very large hedge fund that happens to be populated with many people within the US government, allow the most criminal silver player to be the custodian of SLV's inventory?
Mhm.
Unless you're rehypothecating this stuff, unless you count SLV inventory the same as COMEX inventory, the same as any other of these derivatives, the same as leased metal. How many claims are there on the silver that we can see in the COMEX warehouse? I would say there's multiple on every single bar.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. Lee?
I don't know how much familiarity you have with all the unallocated silver and gold pools that are out there. To me, from an outsider's viewpoint, it looks like everything is just all controlled and manipulated on behalf of the central banks, just to keep the fiat game going. And I believe that J.P. Morgan is a key player in this. I mean, J.P. Morgan's relationship with the federal government goes back well over 100 years. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And let's just throw crypto in the mix. Do you believe that crypto is being manipulated as well?
Well, yeah, I would say all markets are manipulated now. Ever since the invention of computer trading and derivatives, there isn't a market on the planet, including the US dollar, that's not rigged. Most of it, the ultimate control lies at the US Treasury running out of the Fed New York. US Treasury has a computer trading desk in their basement. And that was shown once 10 years back, and they haven't shown it since. But yeah, it's all controlled, all manipulated when it's necessary, though. The rest of the time, the banks are able to run and make money rigging the markets because they know that the U.S. government, they're not going to turn on the U.S. government, or the government will shut them down. That's what happened to J.P. Morgan with the silver investigation. It was really instigated by all the repo stuff going on that JP Morgan caused. So Trump got pissed off and said, okay, we're going to shut you down. We're going to charge you with RICO charges, which is pretty easy to do with JP Morgan if you had a regulator who was willing to do something. And that's what happened. And then Jamie Dimon got back in line, and they go on from there. But yeah, every market's rigged. Cryptos, absolutely. Cryptos aren't even regulated, not that they need to be. You look at the volumes on the COMEX, you look at the volumes in all the crypto exchanges, volumes tell the story, and it's like thousands of times what the underlying asset really is. So yeah, up, down, sideways, the banks can control it all.
You said recently that the COMEX just needs to be shut down. There's no reason for them to be making paper trades worth 400 to 500 million ounces per day. There's just zero need for it. I agree, but can you explain in more detail?
Sure. The problem, I'm all, Ted Butler loves to look at the open interest and how concentrated the open interest is amongst the 4 top trading banks. And it's huge, it's gigantic. I'm more interested in the trading volumes. The open interest is the end of the day tally of where people stand. Price is affected during the day. What happens if you can't trade 500 million ounces of silver every day? What would that do to the price? What if they had to trade, you could only trade 1 ounce of silver if you had 1 ounce of silver, and we turned it into a free market type of trading situation?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think is coming down the pike when we have a silver accident. Silver accident meaning one of these banks gets way off sides. It's a too big to fail bank. Somebody's got to bail them out, and most likely there'll be no delivery of silver. They'll just pay off in cash, and everybody will call the COMEX into question. It's like, why do we have a futures and options exchange if none of the miners are hedging, or very few? I don't really know of any that are hedging fully. And then the other people who could hedge would be dealers in silver, obviously, but that's not all that much. I mean, it's not the 500 million ounces a day that need to be traded.
That's a really good point. A lot of the miners did not really participate in that run from 2008 to 2011 because many of them had hedged and sold at much, they had sold forward a lot of their production, and so they didn't get to reap the rewards of, $50 silver or, $1,800, $1,900 gold. The investors have let them made it clear, we don't want you hedged. We want you to fully participate if in the next bull market for silver and gold. So you're right. The miners are not hedging. So why the hell is there so much futures activity for hedging purposes?
Yeah. And why do we even need futures and options? I get that some people have legitimate reasons to hedge, but the vast majority of even the open interest is not legitimate. It's just, they like to say, well, speculators are important for volume. We need volume. We don't need this kind of volume. Mm-hmm. I mean, 500 million a day. And some days, I saw a day a couple of years ago, 3 billion ounces traded in one day. I mean, that's
the global mine production is only like 800 million ounces
per
year.
Most of that, the vast majority goes to industrial uses, never even hits the COMEX. Most of the silver that's mined never hits the COMEX.
Yeah.
COMEX, it's a joke. And the rest of the world's starting to wake up for that. And if you think about it, it's the only exchange on the planet for silver. LBMA is an association. It's not an exchange. It never claimed to be an exchange. They can rig their numbers, obviously, as they do. But there's no free market silver, even in Asia. China has the gold exchange, which would be closest thing to a real physical exchange, I think. But there's nothing for silver.
I thought Shanghai now had a silver, or was developing a silver.
They have futures and options. They don't have it's kind of the same thing as the COMEX, but it's, not much goes through there.
Okay.
But it's not deliverable either, I don't believe, any physical. It's just, you can play the futures and options game there.
Okay.
Whereas with gold, they have delivery mechanisms.
If the COMEX was based on one contract representing 100 ounces of silver or 1,000 ounces of silver, and that physical silver had to be in inventory, I don't think we'd see the trading volumes that we're seeing. So that begs the question, like, what would happen to the price of silver if that just mechanism just disappeared? I mean, it's all, from my view, fiat silver, right?
It's worse than that. It's rehypothecated fiat silver. Yeah, we would find the true fair market value of silver. Nobody knows what the true fair market value of silver is. We haven't. I mean, the COMEX has been around, this version of the COMEX, since the early 1970s, when they started the computer rigging models at the Fed. And it's like, how long are we going to let this bullshit go on? And we can change it. You guys are changing it. Buy physical silver. Get it in your own possession. If you're too scared to bring it in your own possession, don't use SLV because JP Morgan's knee deep in that. Use PSLV.
Mm-hmm.
And although, don't forget about third-party risk. I think most of the silver at PSLV is stored in Canada, which could be a problem since it's a socialist nation.
We actually just asked Rick Rule about that yesterday, and one of our members asked the question, are you willing to put on one of those World War I hats and get the other employees of Sprott and defend the silver? And Rick was like, I find it's much better to defend things a different way. And quite often a lawyer or campaign contribution works best to defend things.
Hey, there's smart guys up there, let me tell you.
Bix, what type of silver are you currently stacking? Do you have a favorite type of silver?
I do. And this has changed over my evolution in silver. I've been doing this 20 years. I am a huge fan of the pre-65 coinage for various reasons. The best reason is probably that it's harder to counterfeit the stuff. And it comes with stiffer laws. You're running into counterfeiting laws instead of just fraud. But also the small denominations is great. If silver goes to $1,000 an ounce, those sitting with 100 ounce bars, you got $100,000 you're trying to cash in. It's harder to do. Mm-hmm. And can silver go to $1,000 an ounce? Absolutely. I mean, I think silver and gold should be traded 1-to-1. Silver and gold, both of them have 6 billion ounces above ground. The only thing about the silver gold ratio right now that says it should be 68-to-1 is the COMEX price, and that's it. Everything else, it should be 10-to-1 or 7-to-1, like it comes out of the ground.
Well, cost to mine an ounce of silver probably plays some role there, and cost to mine an ounce of gold is $1,000 an ounce.
I agree, but here's the other thing: is that you've got silver mines which are mostly closer to the surface, and I think they keep changing it, but the U.S. Geological says he's got 17 to 20 years of silver left of identifiable. Now that seems to grow over time, but gold, there's a ton that's been identified. You just got to get it out of the ground. So if we do have a sudden awakening in the silver investment world, and silver does what it's supposed to do, be traded at fair market value, I think there'll be a mad dash to get silver at any price, and you're just not going to get it. These mines don't come online very fast. But I do believe it's hard to see how silver could be freely valued if the only place that the value is being determined is on the COMEX.
I'm going to share a chart about something you just said. And I'll edit this up, don't worry. So you just mentioned that the U.S. Geological Survey is showing us what was it, 17 years of identifiable resources remaining for silver?
Yeah, but it's been that for about 10 years. So they keep it's one of the lowest out of all commodities.
Yeah, no, but I think what a lot of people don't realize is the problem doesn't start when the final ounce comes out of the ground. The problem starts when there's not enough mine supply to meet demand, and someone's not getting their silver. So every commodity is like a bell curve, right? Production rises, it peaks, and then it declines. Every oil field is like that. That was the whole peak oil theory. So the whole peak silver theory is, all right, did we peak back in 2015, 2016? A lot of people think we did, and it's just been steadily downhill ever since. thing is, industrial demand is only about 500 million ounces, and we're still producing 784, according to this one. And so the real problem happens when industrial consumption exceeds globally mined supply each year. And then the question becomes, can you recycle enough to make a difference? And Keith Neumeyer says you can't recycle silver for less than $70 an ounce. He's owned 3 companies that went bankrupt trying to recycle silver.
Absolutely. I mean, and those numbers would change, obviously, if silver, was at $100 an ounce. Everybody it would be more beneficial for those silver as a byproduct type companies to go after silver as the product. And I think we will hit those days. But right now, with, like you said, with the industrial demand, literally with the Green New Deal and all that, it's all you can see is skyrocketing silver demand. And all we do is look at the COMEX and say, okay, today it's at 27, tomorrow it'll be 28, and the next day it'll be 27, the next day it'll be 28. If it gets anywhere near 30, the CFTC has to tamp down the silver price. It's gotten to be so ridiculous. And I love that you guys are out there spreading this word. I've been screaming about it for 20 years. I mean, I've been screaming it for a long time. I have laryngitis from screaming it. And it tickles me that everybody else is getting in on the action too, calling out the Perth Mint for their unallocated accounts. I did that in 2011. I was screaming at the same people at the Perth Mint, and they stopped the program. And it was awesome. And Ted Butler had started it, and we just all came in on it. And then they stopped the program. And then for some reason, basically because they were losing control, they had to start up the program again and brought a couple of these same old guys who were running the rig job before back in. And now it's being exposed again. I love that.
Yeah, we'll see. David Lynn over at Kitco, he's got a scheduled interview with Richard Hayes coming up. He tweeted it yesterday. And everyone was ripping on David Lynn on Twitter, saying, "Hey, we'll be watching, dude. Are you going to do a PR job, or are you going to have a real interview?" And
it's Kitco.
Yeah, I know. He's probably, I don't know. Maybe he's just muzzled and he can't ask real questions. But anyways, I think his reputation's on the line here for this interview that's coming up, because we've many big accounts on Twitter were tweeting at him yesterday going, dude, we're watching this interview.
Well, don't forget, I mean, Kitco has an unallocated, allocated accounts with the World
exactly. They're not
he's not going to say anything that's going to get him fired.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's in it. I don't know why they would even take that interview then. You know what I mean? Why put him in the position of even having to do a softball interview if he knows he's just going to get ripped apart? I mean, it would have been better just to ignore the entire story rather than take on the interview.
I think it's the opposite. I think the sides that are in trouble, the Perth Mint, Jeffrey Christian, Jeff Curry, those guys had to come out to fight for their case because they're in deep doo-doo. And so it was probably the guy at the Perth Mint coming to Kitco saying, hey, we got to stop this, nip this in the bud before people find out what's really going on.
Well, they tried to do something, I don't know, about a week ago with a guy named Kevin Rich. I don't know if you saw that interview on Kitco, but that was a real softball thing. You know, they were responding to Rob Keens, the guy on Gold Silver Pros. He and another fellow, I can't pronounce his name, did this really in-depth audit video. I think they've done 3 videos now on the Perth Mint. Really just tearing it apart. It's basically it's a bank fractional reserve system. I think it was Happy Hawaiian who said they're selling gift cards. They're selling gift cards to customers, and they say, oh, free storage. Yeah, because you're just funding their inventory. You're giving them your cash, just funds their inventory for free. Of course you got free storage. You gave them an interest-free loan. And not only that, you gave Peter Schiff a 2% sales fee for the privilege of giving them an interest-free loan to fund their inventory. I mean, that's essentially what it is, right? Or am I misinterpreting that thing?
That's the exact argument I had back in 2011. Ultimately, they came back and said, well, no, it's all, the unallocated is our inventory. And my response was, okay, you don't have any inventory right now. You can't make any coins. So it's completely naked. You're just admitting it's completely naked. And the Perth Mint back then said they don't do any silver and gold derivatives. And yet Gold Corp, the owner of the Perth Mint, had a whole web page of all the derivatives they offer all their customers. So it's nothing but lies from these guys.
Well, there was a video, I thought it was current, but then someone pointed out it was 2016. But it was a video of Richard Hayes at the Perth Mint talking about starting a gold and silver futures exchange in Australia. So, I mean, they have the ambitions. I don't know. I don't think they didn't follow through with it, but they have the ambitions to go there. So whatever.
The derivatives are what is stopping the price of silver from realizing that it's fair market value.
Yeah.
That's plain and simple. And any market that gets so massively distorted from a derivative exchange trading hundreds of millions and billions of ounces per year, over 100 billion ounces of silver is traded on the COMEX every year, and the LBMA is like 120 billion. That's just wrong. And all it does is distort the price of silver. So we don't know what the true fair market value of silver is today.
Yeah, it's crazy. So about a week ago, you had a video where you said that you are expecting big things in July. Primarily, I think the gist of it was last year July was a major delivery month for some reason. July was, and you're expecting big things again this year.
Yes.
Could you clarify?
Sure. Well, yeah, July of last year, I think it was 85 million ounces was actually delivered, blew away anything the COMEX had ever delivered. And that's the key, is move people away from the derivative contracts or ETFs to the real thing, to real physical silver. Mm-hmm. So we got another July coming up. Currently, there's about 100 million contracts that are still outstanding. And I think there's 8 trading days left in the June contract into the July delivery. So you got anywhere above, say, if it goes above 85 million, that'll be a monster month. But right now, with 100,000 contracts outstanding, that's $500 million. That's 500 million ounces. So Jeffrey Christian and his friends over at CPM Group and all the banksters, what they do is they'll roll over as the month comes to a close. We're going to see if they can roll over, say, 400 million ounces. And that's still not enough. They'd have to do 450 million ounces rolled over between now and then to really keep the spotlight off of silver. So anything nearing 80 million ounces delivery for July, I would say, is a home run for the silver lovers.
So Bix, the Fed came out today talking about 6% inflation. Kyle Bass was out, I think, yesterday saying it's at least 12%. Yet silver's down today again. Do you have any thoughts on the inflation numbers, where the Fed's going, that whole angle?
Yeah, inflation's a lie. A lot of it comes from the rigging of all commodities. They can keep the price of, I mean, they made oil go to negative $40. They can make silver go to negative $40 with a click of a mouse. That's how removed we are from reality. But as far as inflation, we all know it's there. It's leaking into everything from the food you eat, the clothes you wear, the houses you try to buy, everything but silver and gold. Heaven forbid that inflation leaks into there.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, speaking of inflation, I stopped into a gas station today because I was thirsty. I wanted to buy a bottle of water. So bought like a liter bottle of the electrolyte water. It was like $3.05. I'm like, are you crazy?
It's insane. They're gonna watch the price of air go up pretty soon. The whole thing is so ridiculous. But as you know, it all stems from the amount of money they're printing. And the thing I like to tell my people is, it's not what the government says they're doing. They say they're doing crazy things. They say they're printing massive amounts of money. It's what they don't tell you that is really shocking, because they do create unlimited money and give it out to special projects where it needs it, and don't report it to anybody in the whole world. And that's when you have an untethered currency, you have the power to do that. And every country has learned that the US is doing it, so they're doing it as well. This is where, if you want to call it hyperinflation, I think there'll be a crack up explosion of everything. one big bank will go down and everything just stops and they got to rejigger the poker chips around the table.
You're talking full currency collapse. What's the next currency then? Fed
Well,
coin?
that's the question. And who decides it? Who are the deciders? Would we turn to the Federal Reserve and the BIS and the World Bank to decide what our next currency is after they've completely screwed up this one? I don't think so. I think we go back to some kind of hybrid gold, silver, cryptocurrency type of world. The US will invent its own currency. It, from what's going on at the US Mint, might be related to gold and silver coinage used as money, where you can go into a bank and cash in your gold and your fiat money for gold and silver, new dollar type of thing, which is in the Federal Reserve To Roota stuff.
We interviewed Dave Kranzler about a week ago about that subject, and he's like, if the currency fully collapses, that's the Fed collapsing. There's no more Fed after that.
Yeah, but at the same time, you know, I've studied the Fed for 20 years now. All the To Roota documents came out of the Fed, and that was always the plan: print as much money as possible, soaking up all the benefits of unbacked fiat money, and then crash the system and go back to a gold standard.
Mhm.
That was their plan. I would say, I think it would be hard to go back to a gold and silver standard because silver's way too valuable to be used as money these days with all these new technologies that it's needed for. But that was always the plan. And we have so much gold. I mean, I've done so much research into the hidden gold mines all over the United States. And it's just been kicking the can down the road for the past 100+ years, saying, okay, we know at some point people are going to stop taking this fiat money. At that point, we're going to go back to a gold standard or something new. But most of the people who were deciding that have died, long been gone. And then today they just talk about, you know, if we do crash the system, what happens to our 401ks? And if we shut the COMEX derivatives down, then our system can't maintain price stability. And it's just sad, and nobody can fix it. It's just, are you going to kick the can down to make the problem worse, or are you going to take care of it today and pull the plug?
You know, Kyle Bass, there's an old video I just tweeted from him about 10 years ago where he was being interviewed on this subject. I think it's 2011 or so. And he's like, the easy path out for them is just to print. You know, no one gets reelected by making the right decisions. So so much easier just to print, and you know, it's a path to a dead end and a much worse apocalyptic conclusion. You know, you can either take the pain now and have a really bad recession and suffer through that and then be better off 10 years from now, or keep printing, kicking the can down the road, and apocalyptic pain.
I think with 2 quadrillion in derivatives, I don't see any, you know, recession type of scenario. Go through a recession and then we're back. Basically, the genie's out of the bottle. Everybody knows fiat money is a joke. We got to change things, and the only way to change it, no one's going to be able to decide it. No one's going to, as Catherine Austin Fitts says, no one's going to press that red button. It's going to have to be a too big to fail bank failing. For example, if silver goes moonshot, we have quite a few too big to fail banks fail. And then what do we do after that? You've got fiat money, Federal Reserve notes that are circulating out there. You also have money that has been minted by the US Mint, which is very different than Federal Reserve notes. We have silver and gold coinage, but we have regular change. I mean, that's not fiat money. That's minted by the US Treasury. And I think that's why the Mint has been saying, oh my God, you know, don't hoard your coins, bring your coins back during COVID. They know that the money that will be left standing won't say Federal Reserve note on it. It'll say US Treasury or US Mint or $1 printed by the Mint. That was my other reason for really liking the US pre-65 coinage, is it was made by the US Mint. It is the money of the United States.
So Bix, I just wanted to ask you about the Blackstone purchasing family homes. You know, clearly there are big entities that are benefiting from the current system, and you know, housing prices have gone through the roof for everyone. So it's only these big corporations close to the funnel of the Federal Reserve that are kind of getting advantage of this. Don't you think they're going to fight this to every, you know, thing they had?
Yeah, and I think they are. I mean, you've got a few players who have access to unlimited money. And, you know, hedge funds right now, everything's going crazy. But what the reverse is, when it implodes, they have not just one type of asset, they have many types of assets in their portfolio. A lot of those assets will, you know, it's kind of like everybody tells everybody, here's what you should invest in when you're investing. A certain amount of bonds, certain amount of stocks, things like that. That's great when you go in because everything goes up. When people are coming out, it's like shooting a fire hose through a Dixie cup. You can't do it, and everything implodes. So these companies that are really going after like land and property, that's great for that stuff, but the rest of their book, and they're highly leveraged, will implode, which will make them start selling that stuff at the same time, which makes everything collapse.
Well, I mean, I think their strategy there is to buy hard assets with leveraged loans, devalue the currency, pay back the cash on those leveraged loans with worthless fiat, but they still own the hard assets, right? Isn't that the whole?
As long as the banking system is up and functioning, that works perfectly.
Mhm.
It's when the banking system starts to falter and you have those loans are all called, everybody trying to sell the same assets at the same time,
Yeah,
means the assets go to pretty much worthless.
yeah. Well, it'll be an interesting decade. It's shaping up to be. We will see. And let's talk again, maybe in, I don't know, 2 months or so, as this all develops, and let's have you back and see if see how July went for the COMEX.
Absolutely, it's exciting times.